Awesome. Thank you, whoever that was, telling us that. So what are we talking about today?
You're the boss.
Unlearning curve.
The unlearning curve. What is the unlearning curve? So we were talking about teaching some, I can't remember what the topic was. Doesn't really matter what the topic was, but we were talking about something, and Donnie, one of our coaches, says, well, first we need to talk about the unlearning curve. Like, what do we need to unlearn first before we can actually learn this, right? And it stuck with us so much. We thought, man, if you as a teacher, if you as a leader, trying to take your team somewhere, trying to teach them something new, trying to, help grow, change something, just even learn, even learn, for example, a new song or a new arrangement, there has to be, you have to address the things that we need to unlearn first, because otherwise they're going to get in the way. Because we all have, we are all designed to form habits, right? To look for patterns and to internalize things, so that when we do things, like we don't have to, like, it's for the very first time and it's really complicated and we have to think really hard. No, we know what to do. We've seen this before. Oh yeah, we've seen that. Let's do this. Like, we don't even think about that. We just do it automatically. And so whether it's learning, a new concept, a new way of doing things, if it's learning a new skill, there's, especially if we have some, experience with it, it's like, would I rather train a sound guy who's been doing it in church for 10 years, or somebody who just loves music and has never run sound before? Like, in a second, I want the second guy. I want the person who doesn't have any bad habits, who doesn't have anything learned already. They just love music and they just, want to figure this out, right? So that's the basic idea of the unlearning curve. That we need to take time when we're trying to do something that we haven't done before, and we need to take a minute and say, okay, so what are the things that I think I know about this that I need to question? I need to say, okay, is this the right way? And have other people who do know more than I do give me some guidance, give me some direction. So what's your initial reaction to that idea? I'm curious.
Well, I kind of, with just recently switching, and now I'm at a different church, I kind of have been thinking along those lines with this new church, in that, I don't have to do everything maybe the same way that I've been leading or doing things previously. Maybe there's some things that I need to be open to do differently, or do or not do, or it doesn't have to look the same at this new church. So I've just been, trying to sort through all that and learn from previously, but then also be open to, maybe something new at this new church that I haven't.
That's really good. I think that's a perfect example, because it's huge, because the reality is, at your former church, there were ways of doing things. There were certain people that needed certain things, to function well. There was a certain expectation that your leaders had, that the congregation had, that your team had, that your pastor had. Like, there's all those things that they're all new. And if I just go into it and plug my old system into this new thing, it might work kind of, and it might really flop. I mean,
that reminds me. I remember when I first went to be a worship leader at Grace Baptist, had all these songs from a church that I worked at formerly that everybody loved. And when I introduced them at Grace Baptist, people were like, "What is this music?" They hated it. And so I had to readjust, and I had to unlearn what was a good song, and so I could learn what a good song for them was. So,
which is
Carol,
amazing.
you may remember some of that. I don't know, but
yeah, I mean, been through several different, worship leader changes here, and that does happen. You know, we all kind of have our bent toward what we like or what we're used to, different places, and you know, go somewhere else, and that's not where they're at. You know.
Yeah.
I think we definitely have to unlearn something because, like at first, I think my thought was, well, they have to get it. So I have to keep working my way into what I think they're really going to like this if they get it. But it might be that you have to unlearn that, or basically relinquish what you think is the way it is, so that you can take on a new approach, because congregations are all very different.
Yeah.
And I think in general, we're very much creatures of habit. You know, we like what we're familiar with and what we're comfortable with. And I was thinking about this season of COVID and all the changes that it brought about. And a lot of it was, you know, we're doing things now or not doing things now that we've done for years and years, just because it's the way it was always done. And because of COVID, we physically couldn't do it that way. And it sort of gave us that fresh start opportunity. And I think in some ways people were more open to some of those changes because the other option just wasn't there anymore. And there was a different reason for it. But now that we're more open and things like that, we haven't gone back to those things because they wouldn't work anymore. So there's kind of a new normal happening, and it's not all bad.
Yeah. I think I was thinking about that. COVID has forced us to unlearn a lot of things, you know, and some things were really hurting, from having unlearned them, whether that's getting together and really being together. And obviously in the States, things are more open than they are here, but also things that we needed to unlearn for a long time and we just couldn't. You know, the sacred cows that all got made into barbecue. As somebody who often goes to different churches and leads, you know, I'm always surprised and amazed. And one of the things that I had to unlearn was that, oh, these are the songs that everybody knows. No, they're not. You know, you have the list of how many times have I heard people say that? Oh yeah, well, everybody knows that song. It's like, I've never heard that song before in my life. You know, at some point it just stuck to your church. You loved it. It was great. And you did it. And I think even that's true for different seasons of songs. You know, like, oh, this is a song. This is great. It's done. It's past. It was good for what it was, but it's done. You know. So. What else? I mean, I'm curious to push into what Mindy was talking about, because it's such a fresh experience that you're having. You know, are there other specific things that you're noticing that you're like, oh, well, that's just totally different? I need to unlearn what I thought I knew to be true about.
Yeah.
The list is too long and it has too many names on it, Dave.
Well, it's just, you know, the churches do have different ways of doing things, and teams are used to different ways of doing things too. So, you know, rather than come in and just immediately make it all the way that I'm used to, or that, you know, I'm familiar with, or my old church was, or my old team was, I kind of tread lightly over, you know, making changes, you know, right away, or implementing things or whatever. So like one example, I mean, I think you can think of a couple examples, but, you know, one example is just the church is used to, we do pass an offering. And during that time, they actually do a worship song during that time. And so
they're called offertories.
Yeah, but it's not just music. It's and part of that is actually no, because before they would have had the instruments to be able to have someone just play something. But anyway, so they're just used to, they sit down And during that last worship song of our set, they remained seated. And, you know, at first I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. This is so weird. Like, how can you keep sitting, you know, during this song, you know? And, but I've just, you know, at first, well, for about a month we did it that way. And then the pastor, we kind of revamped our outline of the service, but that he kept the same. And so I asked him if there was some place else we could put the offering, perhaps. And but we couldn't.
How about after the third point of your sermon? Would that be good? Sorry, go ahead.
But we couldn't find another place to put it. So it was just kind of like, that's what we're used to. That's what, you know, it's okay. They're still worshiping, even though they're sitting down. And I'm like, okay. So we've just still been going on, you know, that way. Well, just this last Sunday, I was like, maybe I could, anyway, and I always have to do a prayer right there for the offering too. So I'm always stuck right there with the prayer and then the offering and then the next song with them sitting. So I thought maybe I should try a little bit of a different transition. And so I did my offering prayer. Actually, I had Sam on the team do the offering prayer. And then when he was done, I called for the ushers to come up and to take the offering. And then I said, you know, while the ushers are taking the offering, I want to read the scripture to you. And so I read a passage of scripture that had to do with that song that we were coming up to sing next. And so by the time I read through my scripture and said a few words about it, the offering was done. And so I said, now let's all stand as we sing out this next song. And it was like perfect. They all like stood up and, you know, but I mean, now that is a change that I made, but I'm just saying, you know, before I was so used to just them standing all the songs but yeah, it's okay if they want to sit and worship, you know, but I was excited that definitely more of them stood up this past Sunday. So this Sunday, I've got another scripture planned right there.
Did you get any feedback?
No, just from the
notice?
team,
Yeah.
because they noticed and they were like, wow, that worked really well. Because before a couple Sundays, I even said, like, when I saw the offering was done after the first verse and we're going into the chorus, I would say, stand with us and sing, you know, or something right before we start singing that chorus. But it was like they didn't hear it or something, like it was part of the song or something. So
Yeah,
this worked really well. But
that's
you know,
cool.
but just kind of, you know, seeing that it's okay. Things are sometimes different, and you know,
I think at Exeter, the way they are doing it now is that they say, as the offering plate passes, why don't you join us, stand and join us after the plate goes by. So you're not passing the plate standing up, but once the plate passes, then
Because that's so hard.
yeah.
Sorry.
my husband says, why can't they just pass it standing up? I'm like, they're just not used to doing it that way.
They have to, it's because they have to write their checks out.
Yeah,
Let's get down to do that.
that's right. That's right.
That's funny. Yeah, Peckway Church does that too. They announce it, like, you know, once it's passed, stand up. Or actually, the worship leader calls them, just at least they did years ago, called them to stand up once they saw the offering was done. So yeah, that offering is tricky.
Just
For
like
us, that was one of the things that COVID kind of took care of. We put offering boxes on the walls in the back of the building and in the foyer. And when we reopened, we didn't reinstate passing a plate in the service. And we haven't really had that many people that noticed or seem to care that we're not doing that. And giving is not suffered because of it. So we've just kept it that way. So
I'm wondering, like, this is a little bit of a side thought or a deeper push into that, because it feels like my first response to that, my first internal reaction to that is, wow, what's the offering about? Why do we even do that as a church? Like, what's the point? You know, on the church as an organization side, like, well, that's where we get our funding from, which is disgusting. But sorry, in my it's real, but it's like I hate it because it's not like it isn't an expression of worship. Do we declare the worth of the Lord and the sovereignty of God by saying, you know what, some of the money that you've provided for us, we're giving back to you, because that's what we do. We it's a very tangible way of expressing that you're in control, that you're the owner, and we're just stewards of it anyway. So if I hide it, then, I mean, it's interesting that, and I think I'm not surprised that the giving doesn't drop by doing that, because honestly, the reason there's probably usually music during the offering, I've never studied where that came from, but what is it that why is there music? Is it just like an entertainment thing, as something to pass the time while this activity is happening, or was it originally more of a worshipful experience? This idea of passing a plate, like, some churches, like our church, has always, since we've been there, they have boxes up front, and during the offering time, people come up and put their offering in the thing, which is, I don't know if that's a Pentecostal, I mean, it's not a Pentecostal church, but I don't know if it's a Pentecostal kind of thing to do. But it's certainly, could you stop? Man, sorry. I just have these like creepy crawly guys coming up on my desk here. They're called, what are they called? Caterpillars. And so what are we losing? What are we unlearning? What effects does it have on us if there's no sacrament to the sacrament? Like if I don't even know what a sacrament means. Does anybody know what a definition of sacrament? I'm not from that kind of a church background.
Sacrament is an action that you do that helps you to be saved.
Helps you be saved? Really?
It's more of you're talking about more of an ordinance than a sacrament.
Oh,
like a sacrament would be like last rites, or people call communion a sacrament. In some the non-Catholic, mostly the non-liturgical churches will call baptism and things like that, they'll call them ordinances as opposed to sacraments. But like a Episcopal church will call it a sacrament, because you have to do it to be saved, kind of.
It's a sacred act.
Yeah, I've never heard that. I always thought it was one of what Mindy said, is a sacred act. It's something holy that we do as a remembrance, or as a some kind of like a physical experience of something holy.
There probably are multiple definitions, and that would probably be one of them.
Okay. Anyway, but it's like what role here? I'll ask it this way: what role in the spiritual formation of our congregations does giving money to the church play? And I think the question behind the question is, what do we have to unlearn about the offering? To even make a good decision about that, then, because if it can't just be our custom, it can't just be our tradition. I have to, if I'm leading something, I have to know what's the purpose here. Like, why does it mean something for us to give money to the church? And for me, I see it less of giving money to the church, even though that's a reality. But I also, like, my dadgummit, there's another one. There's a lot of
those are future butterflies, Dave. Come on.
I'm okay with less butterflies. Let's be honest. It's because they like, where did you come from? And suddenly you're right here. So what is it that we have to? Why is it that we do that? First of all,
well, God commands us to. Right? I mean,
there's an Old Testament scripture that says, "Bring the tithe into the storehouse." Yeah.
It's part of living a life of worship, giving.
And also New Testament, where it says on the first day of the week to set aside and bring your offering on according to what you've decided to give in your heart,
Mhm.
Not under compulsion.
Right.
not grudgingly or under compulsion.
Mhm.
Right. Right.
Cindy, oh, sorry.
We agreed not to mention any names,
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
whether they're in your household or not.
Wait, well, never mind. I was like, who's Cindy? Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I think it's an interesting collision of what do we believe about, giving an offering,
Mhm.
and it's like when COVID hit, and at least here, we weren't allowed to. The first Sunday that we met, we didn't sing. It was the most bizarre, boring 40-minute service I've ever been to. The pastor got up, kind of welcomed people, and then just dove into his message, and then he was done and said, "See you later." It's like, ooh, that was weird, man. Right? Like we missed a significant part of our gathered worship.
Mhm.
But so my guess is that the way that we've done offering before hasn't felt very worshipful. Hasn't felt, it hasn't, let me say it better than that, because that's a really lame way of saying it. It hasn't felt like I've declared the worth of God by giving this gift.
Mm.
Now, and of course, half of us give online. It's automatically comes out of our checking account. Like we don't even
Mhm.
think about it, except for when we reconcile our bank accounts,
Mhm.
which I understand, and it also feels like it misses teaching us something.
Mhm.
I mean, because part of my thinking here is Rory Nolan's latest book talks about planning worship services as if spiritual formation actually mattered. Like how are we thinking about, how are we forming our people in there? How are we growing and developing them spiritually based on what we do when we gather for worship? And I think, man, the offering should be so much more, it should do more in our hearts, because it's such a rubber meets the road indicator of where our hearts are, where we spend our money. That's a ridiculously personal, invasively personal thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. And the Old Testament example would be, it would be really significant to you if you were bringing your best cow to
Yeah.
sacrifice, and it would be more impactful probably than, it just, money just came out of my
Mhm.
my account online and I don't even feel it because I never saw it and I never did anything about it except that first time when I set that thing up to take it out.
Mhm.
So there's that. But the other thing you miss is if, in the Baptist church, ones I've been involved with, a lot of times that was a time for special music,
Mhm.
so that you could
Right.
have a talent show during that time. And then you could display the talents of
Mhm.
the children and the old
Mhm.
ladies and whatnot in your congregation.
Oh, no.
No comment.
Which
The
is,
one from the Baptist church.
yeah. I was like, how, where did that come from? That's so interesting to me. I mean, I know the church is special music, it's a thing.
Mhm. It's one
But
of those
why?
things that's probably evolved, started out as one thing and became a platform for something else. But
Yeah.
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 But yeah, Kevin, you were talking too about the sacrificial part of it. And I think if our offerings are not sacrificial, we're not going to feel it, and it's not going to move us toward any kind of growth or, experience of the character of God and his provision and those kinds of things. If it's just, that's just 10% that's taken out and I don't even miss it,
Yes, there should be pain.
Yeah. even in our worship, like I've been studying a lot lately, that just that phrase, like giving a sacrifice of praise and what that really means. And, whether that's what's coming out of my pocket or what's coming out of my mouth when I don't feel it sometimes, all of those things, that's part of our worship and how we live our lives. Like it should make a difference, it shouldn't be just something that we do.
Yeah. Well, thinking about the David buying the threshing floor from Araunah the priest, or the Araunah the, I don't know what he was. Like he said, you know, I'm not going to give the Lord something that doesn't cost me anything. I know some people, you know, they're intentional about giving at the beginning of the month, you know, or as they're paying their bills. That's the first bill they pay. You know, that's like a little tiny way of like keeping it first, giving it priority, making it, you know, like before I've made my car payment or my whatever payment, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
But in terms of what we do when we gather, like I remember like at Life Center, we used to, they would have it, you know, if you have your offering, like hold it up as you're praying. You know, that's probably more of a charismatic thing to do. But I've 10 or 15 years ago, I made a video about the offering and how we don't get it, right? And so like this has been a long standing, that's probably why I'm talking about it so much, because I am passionate about it, because there are few things that we do when we gather for worship that are as personal as this. Listening to the sermon, praying, singing. Oh, you want my money? You know, like, so I understand germs, right? And like passing a plate is a nightmare. You know, it's not like you're gonna like pass a plate and the hand sanitizer, pass the hand sanitizer, like, which doesn't do anything anyway. But
Well, you're right about it being personal, because everything else that we do in that service is pretty corporate, and that's a personal thing. Like we don't give, like what I give, it may affect the whole body, but it doesn't. It's just between me and God. It's not something that the person next to me has any benefit, or, well, other than extended down the road, maybe benefit. But everything else we do, like we sing, we hear the message, we do the praying. Those are things that we are all doing together, but that giving thing is an individual act.
yeah, you know, so my thinking pictures, right? I'm watching this hometown takeover show, like where they go to a town and like renovate the town in different places, and they keep on popping up during the show. They'll have the picture of the whole town, but then they'll have the different places that they're working on. They'll have like a label that comes over it with a pin down, and so you can see where in the town all these different things are. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so I was just imagining, like, when worship happens, right? What am I going to say? Like the percentage of how much I've given comes up, and everybody can see what that is. You know, 2, 0, 12. You know, 25. Anyway, welcome to my brain. Anyway, it's between me and the Lord. Anyway, I mean, there's I think there's, so back to the original conversation, there's the unlearning that has to happen as I as a worship planner think about how I do the offering, for instance, is what do I think it's about? What do I just assume? You know, all my assumptions are all things that I've learned already. That's just something that we do. We always pass the plate, or we have to give money on Sundays, or it doesn't really matter anymore, or we're New Testament, you know. So really the bar is we gave everything that we have, you know. That's more, if I'm looking for a number or percentage, it's 100, not 10. But what have I learned? What do I know? What do I think I know? And I can't take on a new way of doing things if I don't look at what I already think I know and assess that for its validity, its strength. So.
And I think we learn this stuff not by, I mean, we do learn some things by studying, but like for the most part, things we're talking about, we learn just because we've been doing them. And so if we do things, like I remember.
Come into the light, Kevin.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's cool.
Hey, I remember just this past week, I was listening to a worship leader that's applying for a job that I'm helping the church to hire, and the way he did the song was probably how he learned it, but it wasn't right. It's like, I mean, you know the song "Great Are You, Lord," and you sing, "We pour out our praise to you only." He said, "Own, oh, only," instead of "only." Do you get it?
Mhm.
Like, only. And Dave, you've done it that way too, because I was in a breathing room when I first heard that song, and you did it, and I thought, oh, that's cool. And then it wasn't how I heard it on the radio. Anyway, I digress. But that was like, if he learned the song that way, and if that's how he kind of in your head, you think that's how it goes, that's how you do it. But it
Yeah.
really messes everybody else up that has learned it the right way. So we learn a lot of the things that we learn just because we do them, and we do them over and over. And if you learn it wrong, you do it wrong for a long time until
Yeah.
somebody fixes it.
Yeah.
So
That's a perfect transition, because I wanted to talk a little bit more. We talked a little bit about when you're going to a new church. We talked about specifically the offering, but what about helping your team to come to the same arrangement and version of a song? And I think that's a big challenge, and that this is a place where this unlearning can become very, very poignant, and as the way even in talking to your team about it, because unlearning might be, like you said, you do a vocal line a little bit different, because I'm used to the Carrie Job version and you're doing the Skillet version or whatever, like. But there's also unlearning, in terms of like, I've always, like, if you're starting to do something like play with clicks, like actually pay attention to the speed limit of songs, and you're used to just playing them how you feel them, probably too fast and without the right feel. Because if you're, when you're not in the right tempo, that's what's gonna happen. The groove's gonna be different. And so, like Sunday, we were doing an old song, Ancient of Days, blessing and honor, right? Da, 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 da. And the horns were going. No, they weren't going. But my drummer, we tried it with the click. It was at like 91. And he was, now this is one of his first times to play, and he hasn't played with click before. So there's a lot of factors in this, but he just could not stick with the click. He just, and changing a tempo, unlearning an old tempo to take on a new tempo is really hard. Like, that's just really hard. And it was so bad that I just turned off the click, in the rehearsals, like, this is not going to work. And then we were playing it, and he started it the next time. And so I just kind of followed him. And one of the singers was like, wow, I was really having to sing those words fast. I'm not used to that. And I took my my radar gun out and tapped the tempo to see where were we, and we were about 15 BPM faster than what it should have been, right? Which feels really different. And at the end of the day, I tried to pick a tempo in between the two and play it at that tempo without a click. But I think this is something that we do every week with our team, because I'm fascinated at how different churches do things, and even the ones that do give their teams a lot of great information far in advance. Like, it's the version they're going to approximate, the arrangement they're going to approximate. It's in the right key. The chord chart actually matches, what they're doing. Like, they've done all that work. Still, in those situations, like, part of the team, oh, I know this song, I'm not listening to anything, right? I know this song. That's probably and that's why unlearning is so important. Like, I know this song will kill you, because you learned it in some way at some point. And then maybe they are listening to it, but they created their own Spotify playlist with the artists that they prefer anyway. And so they're listening to that this week. And you come to rehearsal and it's just like, why isn't there this sense of like lock? It's like, oh, because we have different things in our heads. So we're always having to help our teams unlearn stuff. And I'll just open the conversation here at the close of our conversation, nearing the end of our conversation, about how can we help our teams unlearn, realize they need to unlearn something and unlearn it, and take in a new way of doing things. And by new, you know, what I think we really care about is just as long as we're all agreeing what we're doing together. I don't care what version you do. I mean, I care that you don't do the Cutlass version of How You Love, or of You Get My Heart. That's just, you know, I need to say that every time. But
that is the right version, by the way.
You are the devil.
Anyway.
So how can we do that? How can we help our teams unlearn a different version than what we want to do?
I think what you started with was just the realization that it needs to be done, you know, just realizing that, oh, this is different. Just calling attention to it. I led this past Sunday, and we did "'Tis So Sweet," which is an old hymn. And we usually do it kind of the slow version. But we fit it into sort of the beginning of the service, and we wanted to kind of keep the energy up. And so we did it more upbeat. And
look at this on my freaking arm. Get out. Damn.
Sure.
Flick them off.
Yes. Dang it. I'm like
the cicadas we had here.
Sky.
They might be falling out of your ceiling, Dave.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Sorry.
Go on, Karen.
It's okay.
"'Tis So Sweet."
Yeah. So because we just wanted to keep the energy up, kind of keep things moving, we were sort of getting the morning started. We did it faster. And because of that turnaround coming, out of like the verse into like the refrain was just too fast. And I was like, we need to put a little bit of breathing room in there. And then we had this whole conversation about like, well, are they going to follow us? Are they going to jump in early anyway? Because they're used to like one beat and we're back in, but working through it with the band, kind of realizing that we're doing it fast enough that, you kind of naturally need that like 2 beats or 4 beats of breathing room. So I think part of it's communication, when you're working with the band, to just like highlight the reason maybe for making a change, doing a different arrangement. And so that everybody's tracking with, okay, there's a point. We're not just doing this arrangement just to be different, although sometimes there's, for variety's sake, you do that, but being really clear about why we're making a change or doing something different helps.
Yeah. Sometimes if we're doing a song that I know is going to have a familiar, like everybody's going to say, they're going to look at it and say, I know that song. I might alert them to say, hey, this isn't the version you probably know, so please listen.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to remind them of that. Did you guys do the Hawk Nelson version of that? Like it has the extra chorus in there. You're the shelter in the storm. No, I'm serious. I'm curious if Chris would do that.
No? I don't think we have.
Was it just the hymn words? It wasn't anything else, no extra chorus?
Okay. Yeah.
So,
this time we just did the regular chorus, just faster. It was fun, and they followed. It was good.
Yeah. The other week we did, I don't know, it was a song, and we typically do like the studio version of that particular song, or at least, yeah. But then I found a live Sunday morning version. That's number 4, Caterpillar, that I just flicked off. And the drummer, the particular drummer that was on that Sunday, is the kind of drummer that writes out his parts, like has it all written out. And he was like, oh no. I was like, oh, I sent you the video, but he didn't even watch it because he already knew it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not alert him. I didn't say, hey, by the way, we're doing this different version today.
Yeah.
So alerting them, setting them up well. What else?
The bad thing is when you alert them and they still don't do it. But
Yeah.
Well,
I will say with this church, because we did have that, with on my former team, different versions and, well, which one are we doing? Even though I put it in planning center, the one, like you said, they a lot of times just think they know it, or they don't listen to it, or they just assume a certain version it's going to be, you want it to be. But with this new team, we use tracks, and because we don't have a lot of instruments right now, and they used them previously for 2 years prior to me coming, so they're used to those. The team is used to the tracks, so it's like I match whatever I put in planning center is matched to the track that I picked, pretty much as much as I can do that. That's what I do, and then that way they know what that track is going to be like. When it comes to the versions of it. So that's been very helpful. And the click is in there. I'm like in heaven. I am like, thank you, God. This is like so much easier.
Good.
I fought for 10 years to have the click in our ears, and it never happened. And now it's just like I walked into it. It was a learning curve for me. But I was willing to do it. I'm like, I'm willing to learn how to work with these tracks, work with a click, just because I wanted to for so many years. So it just makes it easy. It really does.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that makes me think of another area that's really common for people to have to unlearn is what goes in my in-ears, what's in my mix. Like we're working with a church here right now where the first night we got together with them, everybody was talking about different things, and we talked about the click, and the one of the players said, his instrument will remain nameless, said, "Oh yeah, I don't usually have it in my ears at all." And me and the other good trainer were just kind of like, okay, well, like in our heads we're like, let's see if he's the problem or not. And he was the one that didn't have the right feel, the right tempo, the right groove. He was missing it, and it was just like, you're not with the rest of the band. But I think that's an indicator of people have learned, and I use that word generously, how to mix their ears. I think I would bet at least half of the teams in worship teams in the church in the US don't have a good mix and don't know what to do about it in their ears, if they have ears. Am I wrong?
What?
You're probably right.
Like mostly because nobody's ever really taught them what they're supposed to sound like, and they're very, it's a very personal, preferential thing, except for that it's not. I mean, to a degree it is. The nuances of that are I would say are true, but I think you have to unlearn that it's completely personal preference what's in your ear mix. That's a strong statement, but I think it gets us into a lot of trouble.
Well, I think it's absolutely true that there are what you might call best practices when it comes to how you set up your ears. I think a lot of people try to get the sound to sound like what they want the congregation to hear. They try to balance all as if they're the sound guy for that front of the house. And that's not what you want in your ears generally.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly depends on what your role is. It's like, oh, my singer, okay, you like in our environment, the speakers are real close to you, they're real loud, the ones for the room. The drums are not completely shielded in, so like no drums. You just need a pitch and rhythm instrument like the piano, the guitar, a little bit of that, and the other vocalist. That's it. Take everything else out and apply that subtractive mixing technique to what you're doing. If I'm the worship leader, I need to be tracking, and it's probably gonna sound more like what it sounds out there. Again, for me, that depends. It depends on how much, like, as the worship leader, the I take on the responsibility of keeping the band on the click, not completely, but you have to allocate energy in your head to lead the band with the click if you're using that. So sometimes that means if my drummer's not strong enough, I need to turn him further down than I want to for the way I want things to feel. But I just need to have that click be poundingly loud in my head so that I can make sure that we're staying on this. And here we are, guys. You know, and if you get off, you'll listen and then you'll find me again, you know. But I think most people don't know those best practices, haven't learned that there are best practices. And what they have learned is what? They know what they're doing. I don't know. What?
I think they know.
Yeah. I mean, in that scenario, they have learned what they think is most important. Right. They have also learned that it's never going to sound good in my ears. Right. They've settled. They've learned that that's okay. That you can't really get it anywhere. It's going to sound bad.
Because they didn't want them to begin with.
Because they didn't agree anyway. Right. We're not rock and roll performing professional musicians anyway. What are we doing with this? This is church.
Takes the whole worship out of it.
I think the other thing that goes with in-ears is that some worship leaders don't take the time to instruct their people how to do that. And so the person, if they're like my wife, for instance, she would sit through a whole set with a bad, terrible mix, but she wouldn't want to say anything like, hey, I don't want to interrupt the whole thing just to get my ears right, but I don't know what to do. And so I don't know if most people, but I'd say half the people probably are like, I don't care. As long as I can hear something, I'll be all right. Or if I can hear the click, that's all I need, or whatever. And they're embarrassed because there's not enough training in how to get what you need.
Yeah, they've learned, and I think a lot of worship leaders don't know themselves. They don't have the skills to train their team. You know, they're not too far different than, you know, what the band is like. And they just don't know. So,
and like you said, different roles will need different things in order to make their contribution to the team. And you know, if you're not hearing, you know, we only have a couple, like our worship leader usually, and like one or two other members of the band have in-ears. The rest of us just have like monitors. And just even in those instances, knowing what we need more or less of to be able to follow along and adjust our contributions. You know, there's places where even though I love to sing harmonies, I will intentionally sing unison because the violin is playing a beautiful harmony line and I don't want to compete with that, or what's coming into my head would not mesh with that. So there's times when, you know, you don't just need to hear the worship leader to follow along and stay in tempo. You need to see what else is contributing and how you need to adjust so that the whole goes together. So
yeah,
something that I've found and been trying to adjust when I'm singing as a vocalist, to adjust our monitors so that I am hearing a little bit of everything so that I kind of know what's going on.
Yeah. And that's the other, you know, one end of the spectrum is like, I don't have anything in my ears almost. And the other is like, I'm trying to have everything and it's supposed to sound a certain way. But the reality is music done well is a conversation. It's not a monologue. And you can't have a monologue. You can't have a conversation with somebody if you can't hear them. You have to be able to respond to what they're doing, what they're saying. You know, like, oh, there's a violin happening, and they're covering the part that I was going to sing. All right, they can, or I can say, hey, can you do that on the first part, and then I want to sing it on the second part, and you play something different. You know, like you can talk about that, but you can't if you can't hear them. And I think the other thing that she mentioned too is, I was thinking about everybody has their little box that you know, whatever it is that controls their mix. Well, that's not the case always. You know, sometimes it's like I have my mix on my phone and I, you know, dial it in and I find it here and I turn it sideways. Say, which one? Okay, let me turn that up. You know, like it's a lot more difficult of a process, or even harder than that. Can I get a little bit less of Carol in my ears? You know, which I feel like a jerk saying that every time. You know, like that's a whole different level. And then does the sound guy know, like, are they comfortable enough to be like, okay, yeah, hit that mix here, and a little, how is that? Is that good?
And how
Like,
much less?
how much less? You know, like, you have your hand signals. Is that, you know, all this, like, there's a lot of complications to getting your ears right,
Right.
or your monitor mixes right.
Yeah, and communication with, if it is the sound person in control of that, communication with them and then back to us, you know, it's challenging sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, was that something that was talked about at the conference where they suggested that everybody doesn't have access to the sound guy, but you, like, if Carol, if you want more of something in your ear, you tell the worship leader, and the worship leader tells the sound guy, not 6 people at the same time saying, I need more of this, I need more of that. And the sound guy feels like he's getting bombarded, and then he hates everyone, and so he just doesn't do anything, which he probably hated everyone before you started anyway, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it does kind of
Speaking of
depend
something we have to
on the
unlearn.
night. Yeah, and how many people are on the team. You know, if we
Yeah.
only have 2 vocalists, it's not as big of a deal. But if there's 4 on that side, you know, we'll try to, you know,
Or at
pick
least
our
go one at a
windows of
time.
opportunity to give feedback, or, you
Right.
know,
At
yeah.
least go one at a time if you're not going to go through someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll try to, like, I will really intentionally, if I'm not leading but a vocalist, kind of try to check with the people I'm singing with and be like, are you guys hearing okay? Do we need more piano? Like, how do you feel? You know, and kind of get a consensus before we give feedback. So one person's not asking for more guitar and the other person's asking for less guitar, you know, that kind of thing. Try to get a feel for, like, you know, are we all together in what we feel we need? So that's the challenge of having a monitor for, you know, up to like 3 or 4 people. But
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
yeah.
It's been so long since I've had to ask the sound person to, like, mix my ears or mix the monitor. It feels like, oh, what a nightmare. I remember those days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
We do generally try to, like, we'll run the first, like, song and maybe even only part of it. And then, you know, whoever's leading will kind of ask each section, you know, how's your monitor? Do you need anything? You know, and we'll kind of go around so that it's not like a shouting match, and everybody kind of has their opportunity to give feedback, ask for what they need. And we'll do that a couple times through the practice, try to stay on top of that.
yeah, I think as you said that, I think maybe the last thing, and we'll close with this, is, you know, you have to unlearn asking unhelpful questions, because it's really hard to give a good answer to a bad question, or it's impossible. You know, I think about this every time I'm at a restaurant, or checking out at the grocery store. At the grocery store, they ask you what when you're checking out. What's the
Did
first
you
thing they
find
ask
everything you need?
Mhm.
What a stupid question! Like, you're unloading your stuff? Are you going to go get the thing that I couldn't
Now
find?
is not the time.
It's just stupid. Like, what? Or equally unhelpful at a restaurant. You know, your server's like, or you're checking out, and they're like, "How was everything today?"
Mhm.
That's a stupid question.
Mhm.
You know, like, there's so many better questions. Like, what was your favorite thing about today's meal?
Mhm.
Which one of your friends are you going to tell first about what you ate today? Did you actually take a picture and post your food before you ate it today? Like, those are going to give you a lot better references to how was everything. You're like, oh, fine.
Mhm.
Like, you might say, oh, it was kind of bad, but it's okay. Like, you know,
At that point, you're like, well, sorry.
who cares? Right?
I'm gonna make you
Exactly.
pay
You're
for it
paying now,
anyway.
right?
Like,
So you said, do you need anything in your mix? That's not a great question. I mean, we ask that question all the time,
Mhm.
and I get why we ask it. It's a helpful sounding question. A
Mhm.
better question is, what is there anything that we can turn down in your mix?
Mhm.
Scale of 1 to 10, how comfortable do you feel with your mix? Like, you know, if I make you commit to a number, it's like, 5. Okay, so let's
What's
dig into
wrong?
that some more. Like, I could go somewhere with that. Because if I'm receiving, it's like when a teacher is teaching children, and they ask them if they have any questions, and these are like 8-year-olds. Like, I don't know if I'm supposed to have any questions. I don't have any good questions for you. Like, that's a terrible question for a teacher to ask me. Do you have any questions?
We don't
You
know
know?
what we don't know.
Exactly. So as leaders, you know, or as techs, you know, I need to get really smart about asking good questions. I need to unlearn my bad questions and say, what is it that I need to know right now? If I'm them, do you feel like you can hear Sally enough to harmonize well with her? Is an important question to ask, you know? Do the drums feel too loud in your mix right now? Or, you know, I don't know, like, think about it, unlearn the basic stuff and figure out what is it that you can actually ask that's much more helpful. So.
Yeah.
Dave, I have one
Definitely
question
agree
before
with
before we close. I have one question. Does does Carrie Job and Skillet actually ever do the same song?
Yeah, right. No,
Well, you
I'm gonna
know,
look it up.
no. Can't imagine.
I got what you meant though. It was.
I bet they could find. I bet there's because you know Skillet at least he used to like they would cover some worship tunes.
There are some very opposite, you know, very like rockin' versions and versus very like acoustic versions of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those particular two, I don't know that I can think of any examples.
Kevin, that's your homework, Kevin.
All right,
Find it.
I'm on it. I'm on it.
And bonus points for something they've done together.
Oh, collab.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Well, great guys. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you.
Fun,
Yeah,
interesting
thank you.
conversation.
So when are we
things to
doing this
think about.
again? When are we doing this again?
Did we say we're going to start doing it every other week? Is that
I
what
thought that's what we said back before we went to once a month.
Yeah. So we're going to go every other week now.
All right.
Okay.
So 2 weeks from now, we'll see y'all.
And I'm going to figure out how to post it on Facebook.
Beautiful. All right.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks,
Sounds
guys.
good.
You guys have
Alrighty.
a cool day.
Cheers.
Bye.